The Monitor of Fynfaer by Kristian Richmond, who is also the one telling you this tale. The ascendant angel Aedius approached the viewing platform of his ship and gazed down at the planet below with a heavy sigh. The native elves who lived below named it Fynfaer. The orcs, who had once had their own name for the planet, had now lost such memories and knew it as Fynfaer as well. To the angels in the halls of observation, this world was simply known as E9525b. Aedius preferred Fynfaer. Fynfaer didn't have the easiest history. Long before the elves and orcs had ever crossed the sea and discovered each other, they had warred among themselves. Then, upon learning of the other sentient species, they had warred for many bloody years to claim sole victory over the world. One of the more distasteful elements of Aedius's work had been watching with a keen eye over every bloody battle, recording down the details of each victory, each defeat, which generals emerged victorious to continue their brutal careers, and which fell on the battlefield to be remembered or forgotten. Aedius often found that, due to the nature of a chaotic battlefield and a lack of living witnesses, heroes were often remembered as idiots, and idiots as heroes. Of course, the angels enforced a strict non-intervention policy. They were observers only. But with every passing century, Aedius found himself growing restless. The pure angels were rigid in their beliefs, unmovable when challenged. When he had heard them pressed on the matter, they only ever replied that it was the will of he who knows all truths, the great diviner, he who could see what they could not, who would steer them towards the best possible universe. The best possible universe, Aedius thought to himself, as he remembered witnessing bloodshed unfolding on the screen in front of him. But for who? Fynfaer was out of its bloodier histories nowadays, but that came with its own set of problems. Ostensibly, elf and orc kind were living in a fully integrated society, working together to create a better future. Part of Aedius was proud that they had put down their spears and axes and picked up tools and quills instead. But another part of Aedius could see the disparity in wealth and opportunity between elves and orcs. Both peoples seemed willingly blind to it for the most part, but Aedius knew there were elves who still considered themselves superior, and orcs who were speaking out about their unfair treatment. The schism between the two was growing once more. Aedius had been sure to catalogue this information and make note of it in his report. The peoples of E9525b have been making steady progress towards industrialization, he had begun, but there's growing restlessness among the orcs and growing imperiousness among the elves. I fear Fynfaer is not done with its bloody— Elaborate. Fynfaer? The pure angel Mireille cut in. She resembled that of a coin, or, more accurately, coins resembled pure angels, floating at the centre of three feathered halos, a gentle light shining from within. If the centre of a pure angel was a coin, that coin was also an eye, and hers was fixated on Aedius with a quiet intensity. Aedius sighed. World E9525b, also known as Fynfaer to the local populace. I fear it is not done warring, and now that the world is embracing industrialization, death will be wrought on a larger scale. It is a known pattern, the pure angel Mireille replied. The light around her pulsed gently as she spoke. An acceptable pattern? Aedius challenged. Just a pattern, Mireille replied. Something to be expected. Aedius hesitated. Speak your mind, Aedius, Mireille encouraged. I fear a purge, Aedius muttered. There was a pause. Aedius stared at the pure angel. Her eye was closed as she fought. When it opened again, it was with the same lazy ease with which it shut. A purge is nothing to be feared, Aedius, she replied coolly. You know this. But it is for the good of all worlds, and the souls of those taken are well cared for. Were you not taught these truths? I was. Then go. Return to Fynfaer, and meditate on this. Aedius turned to leave. He was certain she had used the planet's given name to mollify him. It sounded unnatural coming from her. And, Aedius... He stopped at the entrance to the hall. Yes? It might be bloody, but if the mortals of this world turn on each other once again, perhaps it will be for the good. Perhaps it will push them back to an era where both peoples were more comfortable. Back on his ship, Aedius snorted at the memory. More comfortable indeed. They had been slaughtering each other out of ignorance. The elves thought the orcs to be no more than beasts, and the orcs thought their invaders weak and deserving of death for their weakness. But perhaps he could see where Mireille was coming from. The battles were bloody, but on a much smaller scale than if discord spread in an industrial or post-industrial era. Perhaps that is what the great diviner was trying to avoid with his purges. Perhaps he had foreseen a more brutal era in a galaxy of spacefaring races. Even still, it did not sit right with him. Aedius continued to monitor the world below. It faced two worrying futures. a self-imposed era of violence and destruction, catapulting Fynfaer back into the Dark Ages, or a prosperous future cut short the moment that the elves and orcs achieved spaceflight, a crime that they did not know to avoid. Aedeus sighed again. He was troubled indeed, but what more could he do? He was just a monitor. Sometimes it felt less like a divine duty, and more like purgatory. He, too, had once been a mortal. He had been chosen to ascend for his diligence in seeking knowledge and using it for the good of his people. Yet now, it felt like he was being punished for the very same ideals. He wondered how his people fared. It had been hundreds of years since he had died and left his world, but his people were in a similar era to Fynfaer's now. What if they too had crossed that forbidden line? He pushed such thoughts to the back of his mind. They were not constructive. They were not befitting an angel. He was a monitor. He was an agent of peace and good. He would perform his duties and continue to make the universe a better place. By watching. By not intervening. Wouldn't he? That was The Monitor of Fynfaer by Kristian Richmond, who, again, is me. If you'd like to hear more about the creation of this story, then check out the other video. Otherwise, have a great day.